Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're excited to have you here to join us. I'm here with Wynn Burkett. She is the author of Mindful Parenting of Teens, and she's been teaching mindfulness classes for parents of teens for 7 years. And she has a lot of experience with working with teens as a mother herself, and also with Joy Birch, who is the former CEO of Inward Bound, where she used to host yoga retreats, and she now creates mindfulness programs for children at schools. And I'm really excited to have them here. They're both very talented, heart-centered individuals. They've also gone through our Liberate meditation coach training.
Yay.
And woohoo! And I'm really excited to have you here, guys. How are you doing in this? And what are you noticing and hearing for parents right now? Because I'm hearing a lot. I'm curious to hear how it's been for you.
Well, I can speak for how it is for parents of teenagers. I think what's been hardest for most teenagers is the separation from their friends. That's been hard for all of us, adults, kids, everyone. But for teenagers, it's really tough because of where they are just developmentally and in terms of their psychological development. What's going on just normally is they're at a point in their lives where they're distancing and separating from parents, and their orientation is much more towards their peers. So that's what all teenagers go through. That's a normal, natural process. So that's what's going on psychologically, emotionally. And then they're put in a situation where it's all parents all the time, and they don't feel connected to their peers in the same way. And, they're still
They've
talking to.
lost their support system, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Their sense of belonging, their sense of identity, that's gone. So that has made
Do you think that's true of our adults as well? That a lot of this has been letting go of our ego identifications, our busyness with our old world, our old roles. And so we're all having to go through this shift together. And I'm hearing a lot of stress at home, with increased domestic abuse and child abuse, which is really, really concerning. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that too, about how being so together with our family causes, because I think we can all relate to coming from dysfunctional family dynamics. I mean, and just, and then being in close quarters with your family during a time like this, what kind of stuff that's going to bring up and be triggered in you as a parent and a child. Um, do you want to add to that, Joy, with what you're seeing?
Yeah, sure. As a mother of a 9 and a 4-year-old, I feel like so not quite in the teenager category or preteen category just yet. I feel like it's a lot of Groundhog Days around here. It's sometimes I have to look at the calendar to remind myself what day it is, and
That's
and
the second time I've heard that today. It feels like Groundhog Day.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
and so I think trying to balance that. And my 9-year-old is quite good with her Google Classroom, her Zoom meetings. She's just an organized type of person to begin with. But still, we have days where the energy is lower. We don't quite feel like doing what we're supposed to do. And so I'm trying to balance that, staying on a schedule and going with the flow. Because I really think it's important to honor, the ups and downs that are flowing that would be happening in normal life anyway. I think it's just a little bit more pronounced because we're sort of in this incubator, if you will, this bubble, and pushing up a bit closer to one another. And so my 4-year-old thinks it's just an ongoing pajama party.
That's basically what it is, even for some of us adults.
Right.
Like, how many have changed out of your PJs yet? What time is it? What?
Right.
my pants on to take the trash out.
Yeah, upper half of the body looks one way, lower half.
Oh yeah, I got my little shorts on right now. Nice shirt and shorts. Yeah, so let's talk about some tools that we could share and some practices. When I know that you were going to mention 3 actual techniques or tools that parents can be working with right now.
Yeah, well, so what I was thinking about is talking about how mindfulness can help us during these times where we're all on top of each other. I just want to mention one other stressor. This whole online school thing has been really hard for a lot of people. You know, it's just having to adapt to this completely different situation. And if you're a kid who was having struggles before, it's even harder. So if you have learning differences, if there's special needs, there aren't the resources available right now that they were sort of most of the time. So online school for most kids sucks. And they're learning to adapt, they're learning how to do it, but it isn't for them. It's like for teenagers, it's like the not fun part of school, the academic part of it, and none of the fun parts, you know, seeing your friends, interacting with your teachers, going to lunch with your buddies, all that. So I just wanted to note that, because everybody who's a parent, whether it's a teen or a younger kid, is appreciate school and almost homeschool in a way that wasn't true before. So I was going to talk a little bit about how mindfulness could help. And so by mindfulness, I mean, you know, that whole idea of paying attention to what you're doing as you're doing it. So the first way in which it helps is that it reduces stress. And we're all obviously under a lot of stress right now. The second way that mindfulness can help is that it keeps us present to the moment rather than spinning out or projecting or worrying about what's going to happen in the future, because all that is a great unknown right now. There's so much that's out of our control. To just be in the moment helps us to appreciate what's going on right now. We can look at our situation and say, okay, in this moment, at least I'm healthy, at least my kids are healthy. You know, I don't know what things are going to look like a week, a day down the road. So the more I can stay present, the more I can be sort of more resourceful and compassionate and skillful in how I manage my kids. And then the final thing that mindfulness can help us do is just, you know, be more aware of our own behavior, reactions, so that we are doing things in a productive, skillful way. So we can ask, you know, when we're more aware of our own thoughts and feelings, we can ask ourselves, you know, is this useful? Is it useful that I'm having this thought? Is it helpful that I'm having this feeling? And if not, maybe readjust and do something different.
Mm-hmm. And what are you like for parents who are struggling with getting their teenagers to do what they're supposed to do, you know, set homework for the day, or, you know, whatever that looks like, and the teenager doesn't want to comply? What are some tips or ideas that you're tossing around with them?
Yeah, so I'm going to take off my scarf. I just realized I'm hot. So you know, that's a really good question. In any circumstances, one of the hardest things to do is to ask your child, is to make a request of your child, to make a request of your teen. That's when you get into a lot of pushback and obstreperousness and surliness and rudeness. So I think you just have to, you know, lay out some ground rules and to acknowledge that this is a really hard time for your kids, and to allow them to be angry and upset and frustrated, but also to make some ground rules about where that's appropriate and where that's not. Like, you can be sulky and unpleasant and go to your room, but you can't be sulky and come out and beat up your little brother, you know? So having
bring up such a good point about that, Win, though, because I think the emotional release or the emotional expression of our children goes hand in hand with how much emotional healing we've done for ourselves. And
Yeah.
so if we are not comfortable with our own anger and our own upset and our own resistance, we're not going to be comfortable experiencing that with our child. And so I think that's an opportunity when our child has negative emotion to really use that as an opportunity to breathe and reflect on ourselves to see what it's triggering and bringing up in ourselves. And if it's bringing anger up or, lack of control, whatever those feelings are, and to really allow those feelings to come up for ourselves as well as adults.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I do see is, especially I think this happens, I know at least with my father, it's like there's so little room for that emotional expression within himself that when he sees it outside of himself, it's like he doesn't either want to see it or he wants to control it, and so I think that's also a really important component, is that emotional depth and healing and emotional awareness that every parent has, and that they take responsibility for that and not project their own discomfort of emotion onto their child, but allow that space for their child to process their true emotion, no matter what it is. Give them that space. And like you said, when making sure that it's in a healthy way, not beating up your brother, but how are we going to be with this? Can you as a parent still love your child when they're acting out and acting nothing like how you want them to be, and being nothing how you want them to be?
I think that's a great point, Sarah, because what I've noticed too is a lot of time when my child is engaging in a behavior that I don't necessarily like, then it triggers me, and I have a choice point then to project that onto my emotional discomfort that's coming up because of what I'm witnessing, to project that onto my child, or to pause, take a breath, see what it's bringing up in me, and then move to her, hold space for her to be in whatever emotional response she's in at that moment. Because I think what can happen is that when we are triggered in these difficult situations, the illusion is it's about the child. But really, it's bringing up our own fears and our own worries of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be a good parent if I can't control my child, or if my child is going to act like this. But really, it comes back to us. And I think to really be with that in these times,
Yes, because how often do our children reflect our own stuff? They're just reflecting back very clearly our own blocks, our own unconscious energy. And so it becomes this projection battle.
We're mirroring
acting
back
like
and
this.
forth.
And that's why, I mean, how many of us feel that way about our own parents? Our parents are acting a certain way, and it's constantly bringing, and we're just these mirrors for each other. So it's such an amazing opportunity to raise your own consciousness as a parent, to break that cycle of, passing on our stuff or our shadow or unconscious energy onto our kids. It's like our kids come with all this energy. They have all this creative energy, playful energy, and they're like in a completely different state sometimes than us as adults who, we have responsibility now. So there's more seriousness that's there. We're more on linear time. We got to get places at a certain time, and our kids are just like, I want to play. Look at this, and they're just like in a different, and you're like, we need to get here now, and it's just the space, and it's like, how many of us were given that space to be like the fullest, biggest expression of ourselves. But no, like our parent was in a different space, a different energetic space. And something that I do notice too is that you can't feel stress and love at the same time.
That's so true.
And so when you're feeling stress, you're really not feeling love, and you're really not feeling connection. And stress brings the energy down. It lowers the vibration within the whole family. And if the parents start getting the stress, it's the kids feel that. They feel when you're not there, and they can feel when you're not present. And then they start acting out in these weird ways or ways that we don't expect. And so and then what happens after that? When they start acting out, the parent tries to control or punish or reward them based on their behavior. And then what message that sends is, I only love you when, I only love you if. And that conditional love is placed onto the child. And that's what the child grows up with. And so it's really learning how to hold this unconditional loving space as a parent. Are you able to do that? That's one of the skills that you can learn through meditation, is when my child acts out, I don't have to take it on as a parent. I don't have to do something about it. I don't have to control them or mold them or make them something different than what they are. Can I be with this and accept it and connect with my child? Can I connect with their pain? Can I connect with that rawness and all of that energy? Am I able to do that because I'm able to connect to that place inside myself? Because I don't reject that place inside myself. I'm willing to accept all that raw, crazy, dark emotion inside myself. And my child is showing me that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting to see how we as parents respond, adults respond to our children's behavior, whether it's good or bad,
Right.
meaning like we're not just responding positively all the time to good behavior, trying to get them to be a good boy and a good girl, what we see in our own eyes as this is, so that they're following now our program of what's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good when you have good grades. I love you when you have good grades. You're going to get rewarded when, you're acting in the right way in society. I think that also sends a damaging kind of message that we're only going to be there for our kids when they're good. Can you be there as a parent when your kid is bad, or what is considered bad? These are just some extra thoughts that, come up, because I think that parenting is such an amazing opportunity for raising your consciousness and really having heart-centered awareness, because that is one of the deepest spiritual practices, is raising children. That puts you right into, warriorship and right into the war zone. Like, where is your practice?
Yeah.
What is your practice?
Yeah, and those are all key components of being mindful. And just at a more sort of tactical level, one of the things that is happening more with families right now is they're rubbing up against each other for obvious reasons, and so there's more conflict. And so just strategically, some of the ways that parents can interact with kids to reduce some of that conflict is a strategy that in the book we call disengaging. And that's the idea of disengaging from an argument that's about to happen rather than moving towards it. So, we have an inclination to kind of move in and say, why we're right, why this is the thing that you should be doing. This is what makes sense right now. And rather than doing that, disengaging from the argument so that you don't just make it, explode. And there are a couple ways to do that. The first is, when you see an argument starting to brew, is to just pause and breathe, to just give yourself that moment that Joy was talking about, where you can make a more skillful decision about how you want to act in that situation. So an example I give of this is, one morning I said to my daughter, I have these two things that I need you to do today. And she texted me partway through the day and said, I did the first thing. And my immediate reaction, which I wanted to text back, was, well, what about the second thing? Did you do that? And instead, I read it and I went, that's not the message I want to send here. So instead, I said, great job. Thanks for doing that. Heart, 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 heart. And then, she texts back, fist bump, fist bump, fist bump. And then I texted back, dancing girl, dancing gal, dancing. So we had this little connection with each other rather than a conflict. But it was only because I stopped and literally took a breath or two before I responded. So that's sort of the first level. Then the next level is to talk less. You know, parents feel like we have limited time with our kids. We got to get in all the lessons. We have to teach all the values. We got to make sure they know why this is the right thing to do. And sometimes the best thing you can do is to just say less and to repeat what it is that you want them to do in a calm, neutral way. We call this broken record, you know, so can you please take your papers off the dining room table so we can set it for dinner? Blah, 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 blah. Can you please take your papers off the table? Blah, 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 blah. Papers, blah, 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 please. Blah, 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 blah. You know, what you're doing is you're not giving them somebody to fight against. You're just taking the energy out of the conflict, and you will wear them out. So it's worth trying this. And then the final thing is to just stop talking altogether, because sometimes when you stop talking, you give them the last word. I mean, like every kid knows that a conflict between a parent and a child is just a power struggle, and the parent ultimately has the power. So if every now and then you let them have the power, that can be really satisfying for them. So you let them have the last word, or if they're saying something really nasty or calling you a bad name or saying how much they hate you, and you just stop talking, then that's what's out there. And, you know, all of your kids know what's the difference between what's kind and what's not kind, and what's a nice thing to say and a not nice thing to say. And if they've just said something really nasty, and that's what's out there in the ether, they will feel remorse. They will feel bad. And those are the few times that I've had my kids come to me later and apologize for how they behaved. But it really only happens if you actually stop talking. And so part of what you can do, so it doesn't feel like you're pushing them away or abandoning them, is to just say, you know, I'm going to stop talking right now. Or I think we've said enough. I'm going to stop. And in that way, you're transparent about what you're doing, but you're giving them the message that, okay, we've had enough here. We need to go to our separate corners, and we'll re-engage on this later. And so this doesn't mean you let them get away with stuff. It doesn't mean that you let them say mean things. I mean, you can come back to them later, and probably should, and say, you know, it's not okay to call me a name like that, or it's not okay to do this behavior. But in the moment, what you're doing is you're preventing an argument from getting worse.
Thank you for that, those tangible tools.
Yeah.
I really feel like that is mindful disengagement of, you know, a tension. And I guess what I'm hearing when you share those tools, Wynn, is having a level of presence throughout all of that tension that can start to build and arise, by, you know, being aware of yourself as a parent and holding still a loving space, a present space, but not engaging in those traditional ways, choosing not to engage in those traditional ways of battle and push pull. I just want to take a moment to pause here, because I am seeing that we have people on the webinar, and just see if people have any comments or questions right now for Joy and for Wynn, about what you're experiencing at home and what you could use some support with right now. How has it been for you, those who are listening? We would love to hear from you. What you can do is go ahead and type chat in the Q&A or in the chat box. How are you resonating with some of these tools and what we've talked about? And then we can also bring people on. So if you'd like to come on, you can raise your hand to come on video and to speak with us. And as we're waiting for you, okay, great. We have somebody who has raised, maybe you accidentally raised your hand. As we're waiting for you, we're going to go ahead and continue, but please feel free to come in and to chime in.
Well, and a pragmatic tool that I've been using kind of went on the heels of what you were talking about, and I would love to hear your comments and thoughts on this too, is that I've really noticed that when I give my daughters like a choice, you know, you can do A or B or A, B or C, you know, they feel empowered because then they're deciding how they want to, what they want to do, how they want to move forward. You know, a lot of times I'm very deliberate in the options that I give them. But what I've really noticed though, my takeaway is that when I empower my children, they really seem to just, you know, cooperate, if you will, you know, more, and to just and to enjoy the process too, because they feel empowered and they feel like they're making the decisions, they're getting to call the shots. I had started off, you know, when we first went into this, writing out my 9-year-old schedule every day, you know, with her work cycles, her breaks, you know, all of that. And now we have a dry erase board, she's writing it out. And I find that she is being more productive, or just I think enjoying her days more as she's kind of crafting her schedule the way she sees fit in that particular day. So I think choices, or at least that's what I found as a parent, are huge.
Yes, and even as an adult, right?
Yeah.
That I think we get stressed when we feel like we have no choice.
Yeah.
That causes a lot of stress, and when we forget that we have infinite choices.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then things just kind of naturally expand that way. Well, we do have a comment from Christy. She says, "What advice do you have about dealing with uncertainty? When will this end? Will we know someone who dies, loses a job?" So it's really this question of how do we deal with uncertainty and stress. Um, I think it's to be in the uncertainty, to allow ourselves to feel some of the energy and the emotion that comes with not knowing. Really, I think most of the time we think we know. We think we know I'm going to be here, and we have this idea that we're going to be here in 2 weeks, in 2 years, in 20 years. And there's sort of this invincibility that's there, a sense of certainty. But in reality, there is no certainty. I don't think any of us could have dreamt a month and a half ago that this was going to happen, that this would be our new reality, and that things can shift on a dime. So I think what happens is that this kind of, even though it's very groundless, how we feel right now, it's kind of the more truth of the reality that we never know moment to moment what's going to happen. And I feel that the skill that we learn through mindfulness and meditation is how to be more okay in not knowing, and more okay in the uncertainty of life, of not having control, of not really knowing. Joy and Wynn, would you want to say something to add to that?
I agree with what you just said, Sarah. You know, there is no certainty in anything, and that's part of the practice of mindfulness and meditation. But that can be hard to explain, I think, to a teenager who's just, you know, bummed that they don't know whether they're going to get to go to prom, or whether they're going to go to the football banquet, or, you know, whether they'll be able to do their summer activities or whatever it is. So again, I think as a parent, one of the things we can do is be compassionate and empathize with them about the unpleasantness of uncertainty that they may be feeling, and then, you know, talk about how we're experiencing it ourselves. You know, like, I don't know how, like, there's all these things that are uncertain for me too. And to just acknowledge that uncertainty is a big part of what's going on right now, and part of what makes it so stressful and anxiety producing for all of us.
That's such a good point. I mean, what I hear too is that your just that inviting parents to be vulnerable with their children. I didn't really get to see that, in my upbringing, because there was a lot of stress and uncertainty in our family situation. And I never saw, my parents get upset about it or cry or say, I don't know, or, provide comfort in that. So I think that had I seen that vulnerability, that would have been really comforting as a kid, to know that my parents also didn't have all the answers, or didn't have control, or didn't know what to do, and they weren't expected to know that. Joy, would you like to say something? I did notice we had one more comment here.
I was just going to add that it really emphasizes present moment awareness, and sort of almost being, I don't like to use the word forced, but sometimes when my daughter brings this up, and what about summer camp, and what about this, and it's like, we have to take it day by day. Let's be with, like, how are we today? What's happening today? Because usually in the present moment, we're okay, right? Everything is okay. And so to really keep coming back to that. And I think Wynn mentioned earlier, and I love this point too, is when we're in present moment awareness, we're empowered. When we get triggered is typically when we go to the past. So we're not in our present moment awareness or empowerment. And yeah, it's really asking us to use these tools, use these practices right now. And so I'm viewing it as an opportunity to really deepen with that, and deepen with my children with that.
Yeah, and I also think you can be in the paradox of, we don't know what's going to happen. Things are uncertain, and it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
We'll figure it out. We'll deal with whatever's there when we get there. But to Joy's point, right now, we don't know, and we're okay. And that's all we can be sure of, is that right now things are okay. And, let's not spend too much time speculating about what's going to happen, because we just have no idea.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Did you want to say something, Joy? I was going to read a comment that somebody...
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Dr. Jody asks, most pros are advocating for maintaining a schedule during distance learning cover era. But knowing most teens' chronotypes developmentally skew late, I have a hard time shutting them down when that is when they are connecting online with other teens. I'm concerned, though, about sleep reversal and differentiating it from the depressing impact of these challenging times, COVID era. So maintaining a schedule during this distance learning, but teens tend to, it sounds like, wake up late, and they're needing some more sleep because they're spending more time online with their friends. So what's that fine line between what could be depression and sleeping in late and going in that direction, and trying to keep them on a schedule? Am I hearing that right, Dr. Jody? Was I reading that right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and to me, that's the sign of a mindful parent who is trying to negotiate all those things. And it's going to be hard, because different kids have different schedules, and kids, some can get up early and crank through their work, and others sleep in late, and you just have to be paying attention to whether they're getting done what needs to get done. They're not getting depressed, but now's also a time where you can still keep a schedule. You can just start it later in the day. And I also think that a schedule does help with creating some certainty in these uncertain times, but it has to adapt to the kid and to your family and to your own requirements as a working person or as a parent. So I don't think I don't have an answer to that other than to just keep present and paying attention and seeing what's working or not working and trying to help adjust as you go along. There's a lot of adaptation going on here.
There is, and I think that there is that balance between discipline and allowance. Because I agree with you when the schedule creates a sense of grounding and structure that we don't have right now, and having that routine provides that level of grounding that we need. Um, Yet at the same time, because people are going through, especially our teens, they're struggling. It's like we got to cut them some slack.
Yeah.
So some parents, I know my parents, my mom, she would never wake me up. That was the way I grew up. She always let me sleep as long, if I slept the whole day, she would let me do it. And I don't know how I would have felt or been different if she had tried to wake me up at a certain time that she thought was an appropriate time to wake up. I don't really know, but I think that as a parent, what's so important is to get in touch with your intuition and what you're feeling inside as a parent of how to hold this space with your child. Not berating them, or, and you probably wouldn't do this, but the language and the approach, I think, is really important for parents, adults, when they're exchanging with the younger ones. You could even say something like, are you feeling tired? Maybe asking just a few questions to open the conversation and to have an exchange, and to see, well, what would be helpful for you? Do you think it would be helpful for you to wake up earlier, or do you really feel that you need sleep? So I think you could open this as a conversation as well, and connecting with your child to see what they're feeling and what's coming up for them. And if you're not able to access that, following your intuition and seeing what would be the right level of space to hold for your kid. Joy, would you like to add or say anything about that?
I think it's great advice. I really think engaging them in the conversation, and having them help come up with a plan um, is a great way to do it. Because I think when you're automatically getting the buy-in, because they're offering the solution, or at least the co-creators of the solution. So I think that's a great strategy to propose and see how it lands. But I think too, being compassionate with ourselves, being compassionate with our teens, our children. I mean, this is hugely uncharted territory here that we're in. And so to keep kind of coming back to that exhale, that mindful pause. And what I've noticed too is a lot of days I'm telling myself stories on how I think things should be. Um, and what I'm seeing is perhaps this is an opportunity to investigate the ways in which we're currently engaging in all aspects of our life: parenting, our relationship with food, our relationship with sensuality, our relationship, with productivity. And so in where there's not alignment, and the opportunity to move to a place that actually really serves us better. Because I think a lot of us are still kind of in this old paradigm, and we bought into the productivity lie, and there's a lot of ego identification, and so yeah, I see this as a quite a lovely opportunity for all of us to dive into that, and to investigate, and to see what surfaces.
Yes. And again, like, I think our kids can really feel us. It's not said, nothing's explicitly said, but our children, they feel us and they know where we're at. So if you as a parent have concern or a little bit of upset or even agitation about what your kid is doing right now or what's coming up for them, for example, if your child is sleeping in really late, just noticing the conversation in your own head, like, he's sleeping in late, he's being super lazy. I'm raising a lazy kid. And, you know, and then you kind of bring it back to yourself of like, who am I? I'm raising and just all those thoughts and beliefs that are coming up, and working through those thoughts and beliefs as a parent, taking a little bit of time with that before you approach your child. Because once you've worked through some of that energy and your child doesn't feel attacked or judged or diminished in any way by their actions, if you're able to come, like Joy said, with a compassionate heart, with loving intention, then your kid is really going to feel that. So always notice how we're coming at or approaching with our partners, our children, our family members, our parents, having that level of awareness. Like, am I wanting to talk to them because I want to vent and I want to tell them how angry I am and I want to tell them like how bad they are, you know, because that's going to make me feel better in the short term, but it's not a long-term win. I think these are good opportunities for that. So using these opportunities of when we are rubbing up and the tension's rubbing, to use that to come back to self. And it's not about self-projecting all the time either, because sometimes our kid is really acting out. We got to get present with that and firm sometimes, and firm and kind. But you know, to use that as a time to just notice our own thoughts, feelings, and emotions as a parent, and hold that compassionate space for ourselves first. Because once you really learn how to do that for yourself, it's easier to extend it towards other people. So thanks for asking that great question. Any other questions or comments? Does anybody want to come on? We have some amazing people that have joined us today. Would anybody like to come on and ask a question? Okay, we do have someone here, Shilpa. And please feel free to type chat your questions in the chat box or Q&A, or raise your hand and we'll go ahead and bring you on. Shilpa, are you able to start your video and your sound? There you are. I'll go ahead and unmute you. Hi, Shilpa.
Hi.
How can we help you?
Well, it was mostly a comment and maybe a question buried inside of the comment. The comment was more or less, I have observed how I'm trying to observe compassionately how my son is absorbing all this information, because we haven't been outside of the home in days. And finally, last week, we went to the Carlsbad flower fields just to look over the flowers. And we just kind of got out of the car and just momentarily put on our little masks. And I noticed, even though you can't see his smile, I noticed he wasn't smiling. And when we came home, I observed a level of emotions I just picked up on from him. So I very gently asked him, after he'd been playing with Legos, like, what's going on? How are you feeling? And he had said it before, but he kind of re-emphasized. He goes, I really didn't like wearing the mask. How long will this go on for? And I'm telling him the truth. I go, it's for your safety. We don't know how long. But it was definitely something I could sense. It was troubling him. And it was really hard to observe that in him. Mm-hmm. And he's an only child, and which is, I was an only child, which was fine. I could play for hours alone, but you know, boys, they like to be out there and do stuff. So my husband and I had this conversation a few days ago, like, well, what if I set up a Zoom play date with some of his friends? And he's like, well, he's only 7. They don't really dialogue the way. And so we asked him, like, what do you guys talk about when you little boys get together? And he just kind of shrugged his shoulders. He didn't know what to talk about in terms of what do boys talk about. So I'm going to do a play date for him tomorrow. But is there anything else I could include in that engagement? Because maybe girls talk and engage in different levels than little boys do. What could I do to facilitate that dialogue? That's sort of what I'm wondering.
Well, I'd like to open up to Joy or Wynn if you want to contribute.
My 9-year-old has been doing Zoom play dates,
Oh,
Zoom get-togethers, and I'm amazed at how long they can just all rattle on. Not that different than us.
no.
But then something, and she's on with boys too. It's there are girls and boys in her group. There are about 5 of them that get on. And what another mom proposed that we do next week is like maybe bring like a passion project, you know, something that they built, some artwork or something that they want to show everybody and talk about. So yeah, we're working on some Legos. We're working on some more art, you know, that type of thing. So maybe try that and see if they. But you'd be surprised, they might not even need a talking point.
Oh yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. You know, his karate school has been doing Zoom lessons, and it's been working out really well. They have breakout rooms, and it's pretty much every day he's in the living room doing a little bit of karate with his coaches.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
And I was going to say, you know, like boys, sometimes they just do parallel play, you know, like he could show up on the Zoom thing with his Lego and his buddy could have their Lego and they could just sit there and play with their Legos and they might not even talk to each other, but it will feel like they're, you know, connecting over a shared interest. So, so I don't think it has to look the same way as it would look with us as adults. And you know, I think that you provide the opportunity and you just see what they do. You know, they might end up doing karate together. You know, you don't know.
Yeah.
I told this little boy, his mom has been texting me for days, let's please do something. I finally, you know, I created a Zoom link for tomorrow. And I told my son, why don't you take your little iPad and show him your fish tank? And he's like, somebody's gonna come in my room.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Shilpa.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for validating that I'm going in the right direction.
Oh, yes. I mean, I heard you just be honest with your child. Like when your child was having those emotions and you were feeling his emotions because you were tuned in with him. And you were just honest. And now you're providing this opportunity for him to connect with his friends. So
thank you, Surah. Thank you for facilitating all of this.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it's good to have these conversations. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, ladies.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. So we're just coming up on an hour, and I just want to open it up to one more question or comment, if anybody has one, and then we'll close with a short mindfulness practice. Any questions or comments from people here? And Joy and Wynn, any last comments you want to share at this time?
I guess I would just want to say thank you to everybody who showed up here today. I think that, you know, all of you are already clearly mindful parents because you made time in your day to come have a conversation like this, and it's because you care about what your impact is as a parent. And so I just want to appreciate and acknowledge all of you for being mindful parents. Your kids are lucky.
Yes, and I want to reiterate too that Wynn has written this amazing book, Mindful Parenting of Teens. It is available on Amazon. I've read it. I loved it. You don't have to be a parent to receive from that kind of information. I think every adult should know that kind of information. So, you know, be sure to check it out too. Enjoy.
Yeah, when can you hold up do you have it with you?
I do.
Oh, great.
Hold it up right here.
I love the cover.
And I think you can also download it through Amazon or Kindle as well.
Yes,
right?
you can. Yes.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Wynn. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking.
Well, and something that I would just like to share in closing too, two sort of pragmatic things to remember is if you are co-parenting, if you have a partner or a spouse that you're at home with, one of the things that I found helpful is to tag team. You're on for 9 to 12. I'm on from 12 to 4, however the workday has to be divvied up or looks or whatever, because I think that, that helps kind of with the clear boundaries of someone being on and, and vice versa. That's really helped us. And then another thing too is, the analogy of putting your oxygen mask on first. And especially if you've got a lot of little ones, or older ones, but something that I'm trying to do is, if I find myself kind of really feeling a bit contracted, is pausing, sometimes going in the bathroom for just a few minutes, even if I don't have to go to the bathroom, but just going, somewhere where I can shut the door, do a little micro meditation, just where I drop into my breath. Sometimes I even just use a mantra, inhaling, I am peace, exhaling, I am calm. Just kind of something to slow my thoughts down, to make sure I'm responding to the situation as opposed to reacting. And also putting my hand on my heart and asking myself, what do I need in this moment? Because I love and I think it's an acronym from AA, the HALT. Am I like hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Because sometimes I think we need to tend to ourselves and ground, and then we can really address a situation or show up in the way that we want to, and that. So those are some things that I've been finding really helpful as we continue within close proximity of each other.
Those are great ideas. I love those ideas. The micro mini meditations, giving yourself space and really loving yourself as a parent through all of it, because it's not easy. We're in uncharted territory. So thank you, everybody who showed up today. Win or Joy, would you like to lead us in a maybe 3-minute meditation to close out our time together?
I'll do that.
Okay, lovely.
Okay, so get comfortable in your seat and close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. And take some deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the nose, and out through the mouth. And as you're taking these full breaths, notice where you feel the breath most. Is it in the tip of your nose, the back of your throat, your chest or belly as it rises and falls? Just notice where you feel the breath most. And then drop your attention into your body. In certain times, we can get really caught up in our heads. So let's see if we can just drop our awareness into, noticing the rise and fall of our breath, noticing our stomach going in and out, paying attention to where what's going on in the world is showing up in your body right now. So are you feeling butterflies in your stomach? Are you feeling shortness of breath? Are you feeling dizzy? Maybe you're feeling calm. What are the events of today? What's their impact on your body? And just notice that with curiosity, friendliness, no judgment about whatever's there. And then see if you can sink further into your center, into that still place where you feel calm, where your wisdom resides. And just ask yourself the question, what's needed? And just take a moment to think about right now for you, what's needed? Maybe it might be that you need to go take a nap, or you have work you need to get done, or you need to call your grandma, or do jumping jacks. what's needed now for you? What's the answer to that question from your intuition, from your wise, still place? And then take 2 more deep breaths. And when you're ready, open your eyes and bring your attention back to our webinar.
Thank you so much, Wynn. That was lovely. Really feeling the peace of your meditation.
Thank you for having us here today, all of us.
You're so welcome. And thanks to everybody who came and contributed. We will see you. Stay in touch with us. Feel free to connect with us. We'll be hosting these webinars every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. PST, 5 p.m. EST. Bye, everyone. Lots of love and peace to you.
Thank you, Wynn.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you,
Joy.